It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
A strong, positive sense of self-esteem is your first step to anything you wish to accomplish. Yet too often, when we attempt to leave our comfort zone, we have that chorus of inner critics inside our heads, the itty-bitty shitty committee, as I like to call mine, whispering self-sabotaging doubt and untrue trash talk in our ear. Confidence in Bloom celebrates women who rise above and move beyond any self-doubt and old, outmoded, limiting beliefs. Women who have reconnected with who they truly are, that gorgeous, talented, fabulous gift to the world who deserves recognition and unconditional love. My hope is that their insights inspire all of you to do the same. You know, the most beautiful thing any woman can wear is confidence. Here on Confidence in Bloom with the Divas That Care Network, I, Tina Spolatini, speak with women now secure in their own self-confidence so we can learn from their stories and how they found themselves and became the magnificent role models they are to us all now. Today I'm talking with Ann Payton. Ann knows how to overcome and heal from trauma and adversity. As a speaker, radio host, and two-time best-selling author, Ann's contagious presence engages her audience and invites them to explore how to defeat adversity and trauma with a 5-step adversity university program. Amazon best-selling author of 2 books and a keynote speaker on trauma and healing. Ann uses heartfelt coaching to support women in their healing process. Oh, welcome, Ann. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good. Now, you're in a car. You're not driving, right?
No, I'm not driving.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'll be safe.
Okay, good. Excellent. So first, let's start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit of the story that brought you to what you're doing today.
Yes, when I was 16 or 17 years old, my family moved to a new state. And, it was really hard to get girlfriends for some reason. And at about 4 months in, there was a girl that invited me to a party, which I assumed was a high school party. Well, it wasn't. And unfortunately, during that party, I did experience some sexual trauma. And, if you have any kind of trauma, if you deal with it fairly quickly, you wouldn't have gone through as much depression as I did. I just buried it. So I turned to, binge eating, alcohol, drugs. And if maybe I would have just reached out and gotten help right away, I wouldn't have gone through that part of it. But because I've experienced that and some other traumas, I wrote a book on how to overcome and heal from trauma. And I want to help women. A lot of women experience traumas, whether it be sexual or domestic violence, and it can, be any other kind of type of trauma. And I've developed a program, and that's how I coach women on, step by step, how to overcome and heal from it. So that's a little bit about my story.
Yeah. So I mean, high school, 16, 17, that's a really tender age, right?
Yes, it is. And one thing that I've, after that happened, I got into Taekwondo and learned self-defense. And I usually talk to women about that as well. And I've gotten a chance to collaborate with a Taekwondo studio because I think it would be so great if we can get this information to young girls, like in their 11 and 12, so they can get some of this knowledge before, more of a preventative aspect than after.
Yes, I have to agree. Now, I mean, you and I have both been 16, 17 before. And we all know, right, that sometimes things happen that we don't even know is abusive, right? We think, right, because we're so tender, right, at that age, and we think we know the world, we think we know everything, you know, we realize maybe 10 or 15 years later that, you know what, that was wrong. That what he did to me was not, it was not right, right? And I didn't give my consent. I think that's a lot of the Me Too life. Why don't the words just failed me now, but right, like that's the whole, like, oh my gosh, that's what happened to me. So do a lot of your
Exactly.
clients come to you with stories like that and they say like, I didn't even know it was wrong, or I didn't know that I could have said no?
Yes. In fact, I write in the book that while this was happening to me, I felt I felt so many different emotions, and I had a gut feeling of something, but I didn't have the experience or the knowledge to realize that gut feeling was actually trying to tell me something, kind of like beware, step back. But I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know what it means. And yes, I think if we can help the women that have um unfortunately experience anything like this, but also get to young girls, so they can see that yes, you need to do consent. Yes, this is not right. Yes, that gut feeling is really trying to protect you. But if you don't know what that feels like, then you're right. You go into these situations and you think this guy is exciting and charming, and there's no eerie music telling you he's a bad guy.
Yeah, like in the movies, right? Like in the movies,
Right.
right? And it doesn't feel like that at the time, right? It doesn't, like, you
Exactly.
don't hear that music. There's no signs. I guess that's what it comes down to, right? Is listening to your body. Your body will tell you, get out of there somehow, some way, right? Just like with
Yes.
food, right? Like we all have to learn how to listen to our bodies and know when it's the right thing and when it's the wrong thing. So now that someone comes to you and says, okay, this happened to me and I'm in depression, or I get really bad nightmares or something. I mean, we all deal with our traumas differently. How do you
Hmm.
start? Like, how do you, like, you need to go back to the story. Am I right?
Yes. And it's funny because a lot of times if people don't know, like, the way this healing happens, yes, you need to go back to the story, but you don't stay there in the story, because sometimes what happens is in your head, you're just going through it over and over. It's like a loop that won't stop. But if we go through what I call a release and then a resist section, and then we do a reframing section, and then we go on to restore, and it's kind of a 4-step process. So it's great to share your story, but if you can share your story with someone that's gone through the healing, then you have someone that can say to you, okay, so one of the things that you can use in your toolbox is this, this, and this. So they don't get stuck in that story and stay as a victim. And so, yeah, it's a process. And once you kind of release what the experience, then you can get into finding out how you resist some of the triggers so you can keep moving forward in your healing process.
Yeah. And I think that's, like you said, we often will get stuck in the experience, right? That we keep playing it over and over in our head, and what I could have done, or what I should have done, or what, like we all do that, right? And that's a normal stage, right?
Exactly. It
Yeah.
is very normal. In fact, have you ever like had an argument with a friend or family member, and you just keep going through that argument in your head? Well, I should have said this, or I should have done that, or I should have walked, it's all this shoulda, coulda, coulda, and that doesn't help you.
Right. Okay, so I know that it's not easy. I know for myself, I mean, like you said, I have arguments or discussions with people, and for like weeks later, I'm like, damn, I wish I would have said this, and I wish I would have said that. And sometimes I'm quick. Sometimes, it'll come out of my mouth before I even think about it. And so I'll be like, damn it, why didn't I do that? Right. But what do
Exactly.
we do? Like at the end of the day, we didn't do it. We can't go back, right?
Right.
How do we like get that story out of our head? How do we move forward?
Well, one of the first things that helped me was because I did go into a deep depression and it lasted for a while. And one of the therapists and coaches I was working with said, um, okay, and let's look at this, because sometimes in your head you're thinking I should have done this or I could have done that, but you may not have been able to do that. So when you share your story, we're going to go in and talk about, okay, and you think that you caused this, and then as your coach, no, you didn't. You did not bring this experience on. And the second part of it is you have to give yourself some grace. So I know that I kept beating myself up over and over and over because I didn't do boom, doom, 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 doom. And it really hit me when they said, okay, Anne, you're 40 years old. This is when I was in therapy now, and you're beating yourself up for something that you did when you're 16. So let's go back. Let's have the 40-year-old person, you, and go back and let's talk to that 16-year-old girl. And did you, as a 16-year-old girl, know what was going on? No. Did, as a 16-year-old girl, did you have any experience with anything like this in any other time or place in your life? No. Okay, so then we start looking at that and saying, and you are not responsible for what happened to you. You did not do anything wrong. And you didn't bring this onto you. So we go through some exercises to get that to sink in, not only in your mental capacity, but in your heart. Because I think there's a lot of women that need to go through the forgiveness of themselves. Because even though they want justice, they for some reason have to forgive themselves for maybe not reacting as your older self thinks you should have. Does that make sense?
100%.
Okay.
Forgiveness is really, that's the start, right? You need to forgive
Yes.
yourself because you didn't ask for it. You didn't
Right.
ask for that, right? And the fact that you didn't know how to react at the time, I mean, that's ignorance. How are you supposed to know? Right? Sure, when you look back, oh, I should have done this. But at the moment, you didn't think of that, because if you did, you would have done it.
I would have done it.
Exactly. So forgive yourself for that, right? Because it's easy to
Right.
look back. I mean, what do they say? Hindsight is 2020. Yeah, looking back, I know exactly what I did wrong or what I didn't do wrong, right?
Right.
Excuse me.
And
Yeah,
I
so
think, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just curious. I mean, we could sit here and talk about how to heal, but at the end of the day, it's really about how, in my situation, how I'm going to deal with it. And every situation is different. Let's talk triggers more because I mean, I know for myself, I've never had sexual trauma. Thank God for that. But I know there are too many women out there that have. And I know that the triggers are different for each woman.
Yes.
And how do you, like, as a coach, walk them through that when they come to you and they say, Anne, I was in the grocery store and this guy looked like the guy that hurt me, or he looked at me in a way that reminded me so much of that guy. How do we deal with that?
That is a process, and we do that in the resisting phase. Because just, like you said, the triggers are different for anyone. It could be seeing someone, it could be a smell, it could be reading a book or watching a movie with an experience in that book or movie that seems similar to your own. So what we talk about is, first of all, we have an exercise. It's called a color analysis. And what it does is there's four typical ways that each of us responds to certain things. So we find out which color analysis fits you, because that kind of gives us an idea of how you probably react to triggers. So that's the first thing that we go through. The second thing is we start looking at when something that triggers you. First of all, what's your thought patterns? What comes up in your head? Are there any specific behaviors that you do? And we start to analyze some of those things. And then we have tools like, okay, so um uh if you see someone like that person and all of a sudden you're thinking something, then we go through a exercise of what is the truth. What is the truth? Because what the thoughts that are going into your head are most likely 99% are not truth. So we work through those. And that could be something like, as an example, you see someone, you've already gone through some of this work to overcome, and all of a sudden you start with those thoughts. Well, I must have done something wrong. Well, that's not the truth. I brought this on myself. No, that's not the truth. What is the truth? So we learn how to do that with our thoughts. And then with behaviors, for me, when I would get triggered, I would do several things. I would binge eat. And so, I have a package of Oreos in front of me, and after I've eaten 10 or 15 cookies, I'm like, Anne, what are you doing? What this behavior, we've already worked on this behavior. Why are you going back? Okay, you read something, it's triggering you. So let's, and then you go back to the truth. And then we go back to what your statements are on how you're going to talk to yourself. And if you meditate or pray, we go into that. So the coaching program gives them tools to do all of those things. And we first start with the color analysis. So then I know how to help that individual that may be more of a get done person that isn't real emotional versus a really relationship type person that takes everything with emotion.
Oh my goodness. I don't know too much about the color analysis and the personalities, but I've learned a little bit. And it's funny, excuse me, I don't know what's going on with my voice, but yeah, like we all handle things differently and we all fit into those categories, don't we? Even though we like to
Yes.
believe that, I am unique, right? I
Right.
am because I am, right?
Yes,
But at the
absolutely.
same time, I still fit into those personality analysis groups, right?
Exactly. And in general, I mean, I'm sure when I took this test, um, it, like there's four colors. I was mainly one color, but there was a second color. I had almost the same amount of responses in that area. So you're usually not just one color, but you may have one color that dominates. And so that's why that analysis is really a useful tool. And we look at we look at the colors and we look at how many answers went towards that. So if you're like 50-50, then we want to work on both of those categories with you because that's what's going to make you overcome and heal quicker.
Right. So now you may know this. When I'm dealing with trauma and these triggers, everything could trigger me in a different way. We never really get over the triggers.
Right. Well, actually, I think with time they fade so much that they become a second thought. Okay, you've already used your tools so many times repetitively. Oh, that's not going to bother me because I know the truth. And that's the first thing. I've already forgiven myself for what I thought was mine. And I actually may have gotten to the point where I have forgiven that person. So it becomes so more natural. You're right. The triggers never 100% go away, but they become like, okay, so I'll give a quick example. Every time I saw my mom, I got really, really defensive just because of the way our relationship was. So once I started to figure out how I can be um, a more peaceful person around her, at first it was a little difficult and I had to practice it. But now that I've been doing that for years and years and years, when she says something or does something, it kind of rolls off my back now. So it's the same thing with triggers. Um, does that make sense?
Yes, I think I understand that because I think we learn how to be, because we only have control over our own behavior, right? We don't
Exactly.
have control over anyone else's behavior. And when we learn how to, control ourselves in an environment that we know we're going to be uncomfortable in, regardless
Right.
of what that situation is, then yeah, like we know that we have to sort of, I don't want to put on a face, but really
Right.
that's what we're kind of doing, right? We're dealing with a situation that makes us uncomfortable. So we have to not necessarily be another person, but we have to act in a certain way.
Yeah, and I think part of it is if you have the chance and you're knowing you're going into one of those situations, and you have a few minutes to prepare, you prepare. Like for instance, if you know that you're on the way to your mother's house and you're already getting defensive, that's when you pull over and just say to yourself, okay, there's a lot of things that my mother does that really gets under my skin. But you know what? I have forgiven her. I, you either meditate or pray for a minute and you just, try to get in a peaceful situation. And then I've learned one of my tools is when my mother attacks me with her nasty thoughts or phrases, I tell myself, this is my mother and I love my mother. I don't like I do not like what she's saying, but maybe she doesn't know 100% that really hurts me. But I'm going, I'm saying this to myself while she's saying these nasty things. I love
I
my
don't
mother.
mean to laugh.
I know it sounds funny, but it is. The last time that she did this, we were sitting on a couch and she started in on me, and I'm like, in my head, I love you, I love you. You're my mother. You've given me good things. Now this I don't particularly like, but I love my mother.
Yeah.
And that just helps me diffuse the defensiveness. And if you can be yourself, but if you're more in a peaceful state, you'll handle it much better, where you don't get yourself upset or lash out and then it becomes a big,
Argument. Yeah. For really, for what? Right? You're gonna
right.
her, you're gonna be offended, right? There's gonna be tension, and who does that please, right? Nobody's gonna be
Yes.
happy. Yeah.
No one gets anything good out of that.
That's right. And lots of times we all know as coaches that when someone is lashing out at you, it's usually because there's something in your behavior or your actions that is their own, right? It's their mirror
Right.
of themselves and they don't like that, right?
Exactly.
So you just tell yourself that, right? Tell you,
Yeah. So
I love you. And I know that what you're seeing is in yourself and not in me.
right.
Right.
Right. And I have had at a certain incident where I just would interrupt her and say, I love you, Mom.
And it
That
shuts it
that
down.
that shuts it down like that.
Yeah. Right. Because yeah, I get that. And it actually made me think about, when I talk with my daughter, right?
Yes.
Like I think, what am I doing that's triggering her? Because I can tell, that I've said something that has, triggered her in some way. And then
Mm-hmm.
I just shut up because I'm, as a coach, I'm aware of it, right? Because I
Right.
can tell in her behavior, but I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to say to her, what did I say that
Right.
bothered you? Because then, I might be like, well, I didn't mean it that way. And then you end up with the big, sucky
Yeah.
face and all that stuff. And we don't need that, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah. Now I wanted to ask you something else and I forget what it was.
Well, just know that whatever tools that work for you, it just takes practice, and to give yourself some grace and some time, because
Yeah,
it does get better. And now I can actually feel joy when I go see my mother. I don't get all tied up in knots in my stomach.
that's good. Yeah, that's good. And I'm sure, most of us have at least one person that we're like that with, right? And, maybe we do it to ourselves. Maybe, the tension is there and it's unnecessary. We don't know, but we still do it, right? We still
Right.
have that. And like you said, give yourself some compassion and some grace and, some time to meditate or to pray, asking for strength or giving yourself the strength to get through the conversation or the visit or whatever it's going to be.
And that's powerful. That is very powerful, whether it's prayer or meditation, because you are getting yourself into the right peaceful setting that you can be in. It's
That's
powerful.
right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now you said about you had 3 steps. You said release, resist, and then the last 2 you haven't really talked too much about, or at least you didn't specify reframe and restore. Can you give us a little bit of information? I don't want you to give your whole program out to us, but if you could just maybe describe what that might look like.
Right. The reframing is kind of like resist part 2. So a lot of times with the reframing, we do role playing and we try different things, because what by us doing that, you're starting to reframe in your mind, okay, this is resisting, how I'm going to resist it, what are my tools, and then we kind of practice that in the reframing situation, and we even sometimes come up with some better things to do for that individual, because we're all different. And so reframing is kind of an extension of the resisting. The restoring, we go into, if the person hasn't grieved the loss, like I'm speaking in November about how to forgive even in the loss of innocence. So how do you forgive? Well, if you haven't grieved, and I guess I'll just use myself as an example. I'm not going too long, am I?
No, we're good. Yeah.
Okay. So, when I had that trauma, I not only lost my virginity, I lost my dreams of what I thought was next for me. I lost the innocence, and what did I gain? I gained trauma, and then I didn't deal with that trauma right. And so so if you haven't or grieved those losses, depending on what your loss is, and we go into that with each individual. So that experience, what did you lose? Did you lose your self-respect? Did you lose how you thought about yourself? Did you lose dreams? Did you lose, maybe you were hurt physically more than losing of your self-respect and what have you. And so the restore is to make sure that if they haven't grieved, then we go through a grieving process, because that's very important, and that helps actually go back to the first of releasing. If they haven't grieved it, after they go through that grieving stage, it is completely released. And then we go into the forgiveness part of the restore. And again, for myself as an example, you know, even though I may not have done anything wrong, at that time I thought I had. And I asked forgiveness from God, and just over and over and over. So it took me a while to feel that I have been forgiven. And then I went through a process of uh, forgiving of that person. And there's steps involved in that, because that's a difficult one as well. And we go through those each individual steps. And then if you haven't forgiven yourself, we go through the program and tools to forgive yourself. And when I had gone through that restore part of the program, I literally felt like something was lifted off of me. And that's when I got my joy back. That's when I felt like that 16-year-old girl. I felt like I'm okay. I have joy. I can dream. I know that I'm a wonderfully, uniquely made person, and I have good to share. And so that part of it is so powerful, because I try to tell women there is joy after trauma. No matter what trauma you've gone through, there is joy. And I feel like I really need to share that with women, because we get stuck. No matter what it was that we went through, we get stuck of thinking we're damaged goods. We are not damaged goods. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are unique and we are loved. And that's part of the restoring section as well. And that's my goal, to get each woman I work with to that point, because then I know I can usually see it in their face. You know, sometimes we are one-on-one in person and sometimes it's through Zoom, but I can see it coming out. And then, you know, it just brings joy to me that they're at that stage.
I love that. I love that. And that is like incredible, right? To see that the joy has come back to someone.
Yeah.
And I think the most important piece that you said was, it wasn't your fault. Like, this is
Right.
not because you are not worthy and that you don't deserve to be mistreated, but you just happen to be like the victim or the pawn in the other person's game, right?
Right.
It could have been
Exactly.
like he could have preyed on you, but it could have been, wrong place, wrong time, right? I mean,
Exactly.
I know that there's men that prey. I get that. And I mean, let's face it, it's not just men anymore. We're hearing
Right.
more and more that women are just as involved, right? But know that
Exactly.
when you are the other end of it, it's not your fault. I love
Right.
that. And I will say, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. And I know you're over it, like you're past it. And, that may not mean anything, for most women that have gone through that. But I really hate that, victims have to feel, that they don't belong here because of something that's happened to them. I think that's terrible. Right. And
Right.
my heart goes out to all of you.
Well, I think when I got through the restoring phase, um, I literally started to feel like, yeah, I might have been the wrong person in the wrong place, or I think I just messed that phrase up, but you know what I'm saying. Wrong time. Um, but I'm like, okay, that's what it is. I did experience it. I'm healed from it. That's now something that I can give to others. So I wouldn't say it was meant to happen, but it did happen. And after you get through that restoring, you're like, it's okay. Every person goes through some kind of trauma. That was one of mine. You know,
Right.
we don't get through this life here on earth without
Trauma.
major struggles and trauma.
That's right. That's right.
And
That is so true.
yes. And so yeah, I felt like, okay, well, I'm going to use that experience for good. You
Why
know?
not? Yeah.
Why
Like,
not? I'm
and
going
how
to go
many
out there.
women, right? I
Right.
mean, we're hearing every day how many women are coming out of the woodwork now because they're finally getting the strength to tell someone, right?
Right.
And it's because of coaches like you that they have someone to go to that can help them through it. And I mean, you were 16, so you lived a long part, but I've heard women like at 8, 9 years old going through this. They don't even know what that situation is. Like, when it comes to sex, they really don't understand it at all,
Exactly.
right? And this is happening to them. That ruins so much of that good part of the intimacy with a
Yeah.
partner, right?
Exactly. And it's, you know, if it's happening to them at a young age, they don't know any different from it. It may feel wrong to them, but they don't know why.
Right, right.
And yeah, and yeah, that's why I really think that I hope one day this turns into something where I can help young girls just be a little bit more knowledgeable and have some tools in their back pocket.
Absolutely. I mean, I know as a mother, I told all three of my kids, I have 2 boys and a girl, but I told all three of them the same thing. Nobody's allowed to touch you anywhere that
That's
you don't
right.
want them to touch you, right?
That's right.
Especially in, certain parts, right? And I
Exactly.
took every opportunity to explain that to them, to the point where they were like, okay, mom, I know.
Okay. I And they just give you that eye roll thing, like,
Yeah.
oh, geez, Mom, do I have to listen to this again?
We have to talk about this again. But and it's not a laughing matter. I mean, yes,
No.
I laugh at them because, I got through to them. But the reality is some parents don't do that.
Right.
Right. Or they don't have an opportunity to do that. And so, it's important that we let the young people know that if it feels wrong, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. And I'm, it's a sensitive subject. I mean, you're dealing with this every day. So, you're comfortable to talk about it more freely. Right. But there's a lot of women out there that are not comfortable. So it's important that they know there's women like you that they can go to and, open up a discussion of some kind. So maybe let us know where we can reach you.
Yes, anyone can sign up for a complimentary call. If you go to my website, which is annpayton.com, ANNPAYTON.com, there in the main front page, it says schedule a call. And that's a free call. Maybe they hear your podcast, Tina, and something clicked and they're like, well, I want to know something more about this. Or I need to tell my story. Or what's this color analogy? Whatever it is, I will sit down with them and we will talk. And I will do my very best in that hour to give them a tool or two that they can walk away with and start right away. And then if they want to continue further, then, we work out something that way through a coaching program.
I love that. I love that. You make yourself available for them. And that's what's important because they need that. Yes, they absolutely need that.
And they need to know, that the person that they're opening up to, they may not have had the same experience, but they've had a similar experience and they've gone through all the work. They've gone through the overcoming. They've gone through the healing. And then that person is a trustworthy, safe person to open up to.
Right.
And as coaches, we have to have confidentiality. None of that information goes out, whether they talk to me for 5 minutes or for an hour. It's all confidential.
Right. And that's important. And they need to know that. They really need to know that. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Anne. This has been great.
Oh, wonderful. I've enjoyed it so much talking with you, Tina.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Is there anything you can tell our listeners that, if they are suffering inside and they're not ready to deal with, with coming out and telling someone, is there anything you could say to them to give them some kind of comfort?
I think for me, when I was young and this had happened to me, you feel as if you're the only person that has experienced this, and you feel shame, you feel aloneness, you are frightened of maybe sharing this. And I want to let your listeners know that you are not alone. There are a lot of us out there. We have experienced it. There is hope. And if you can't contact me or some other coach that has a similar program, then reach out to someone you trust, whether that's someone from the YMCA or your church or your school, a counselor, or maybe it's your great aunt. Just know that you're not alone and that there are people out there to help, and there is hope and there is joy after trauma. You will get back to your joyful self.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Anne.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Confidence in Bloom is a celebration of self-love, a confirmation that even though you may not look like a screen star or a supermodel, they don't even look like that. You are an amazing, desirable, brilliant, gorgeous, talented woman. We offer unconditional love to our partners, our children, our extended family, even our pets. It's high time we got out of our own way and learned to unconditionally love ourselves. In Full Bloom Styling and Coaching offers an online course combined with one-on-one coaching in confidence building, personal branding, and creating your signature fashion look. Chic definitely does come in every shape. So if you want something to believe in, start with yourself. If you'd like to be a guest here on Confidence in Bloom, contact me through Instagram at infobloomstyling, or by email at tina@infobloomstyling.com, or through the Divas That Care website.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.